So, hello and welcome everyone to the Yale College Voices Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Darice Corey, your host, and I'm excited to share today's conversation with you all. Today I'm joined by Dr. Anjelica Gonzalez, the head of Davenport College, who is also a professor of Biomedical Engineering and a faculty director of the Tsai Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. So welcome, Anjelica. I'm so happy that you joined me today.
Thank you, Darice, and I'm honored to have been invited. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Anjelica, I'm just going to read your bio, and which, I had trouble, oh my gosh, it was, your work is amazing. So what I did is I'm reading your bio from the Davenport website, and then we'll just, have a conversation.
Sure.
All right. So, the head of Davenport College is Anjelica Gonzalez, who is a professor of biomedical engineering and the faculty director of Tsai Center for Innovative Thinking. Anjelica's work is centered on the development of artificial human tissues, but spans a range of applications from drug discovery to medical device development. Anjelica spends a lot of her time writing scientific articles, opinion pieces on topics of diversity in STEM, and creating ways in which Yale students can launch their own startups and explore their innovative pathways. These are all related to the classes Anjelica teaches that are related to the development of biotechnology with ethics, culture, politics, and affordability as the central tenets of appropriate design. Beyond her academic work, Anjelica is eager to engage the Davenport community through intellectual and cultural events in the college's common room. She loves to eat, which
she does.
I do too. So you'll also see Anjelica in the dining hall with some regularity. She lives in the college with her twin boys, Alex and Jackson, who will try to trick you by switching their names to make sure you never learn their true identities, which I thought was so funny. So again, welcome, Anjelica. So I'm so happy you could join me today.
Oh, of course. No, as I said, this is an honor.
Thank you.
I am nervous, but
don't be nervous. I don't bite or anything. But yeah, we've chatted a lot more this year, just via email and different projects. But I'm wondering if you could just tell me, a little more about yourself. Did you grow up in Connecticut, or where are you from?
Yeah. So no, I didn't grow up in Connecticut. I often say I feel like I'm from the other side of the world.
Oh, wow.
Because I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, wow.
So I was born in Las Vegas and was there, graduated from high school in Nevada. And then went to school in Utah to Utah State University for college.
Interesting.
So my mother was a blackjack dealer. She only recently retired.
Really?
And so really embraced living in Las Vegas, as I think one does. Wherever you are born and raised, you think that is the norm.
Right.
So I grew up thinking that everything was open 24 hours a day.
And not in Connecticut.
In Connecticut, and even less so in Utah.
Really? Interesting. So what was there something, what I've found interesting with doing a podcast is that most of my guests, there was something in childhood that just kind of sparked their interests and, took off into a career. So was there something in your childhood that led into the science field, or?
Yeah, I think so. My parents divorced when I was around age 8, and we were always maybe a middle-class family at that point. And then when my father left, we were, my brother and I were kids. Being raised by my mother, who was a single mother. We didn't have a lot of money at that point, and she was working really hard. So when I was 8 is when she went to dealing school and became a blackjack dealer. Wow. And I remember at the kitchen table her kind of going over probabilities and statistics, and teaching me the probabilities and statistics of, when do you split? And you split because it's a better probability that you will get 21 on both than keeping the two cards together. So I think even at age 8, I related the ideas of math and understanding probabilities to livelihood. And if I know how to do math, I can probably get a job and I'm going to be able to feed my family and do all the things that I needed to do. My mom's father, my grandpa, was also a farmer and helped run irrigation systems in the farming community right outside of Las Vegas. And in his work, he would often take me out in the fields on the tractor or out to the irrigation systems. And I learned then, if I understand how water flow works and how pressure affects distribution of water across the field and the needs to understand different concepts of fluid dynamics and agriculture, that's also a job that I will get paid for in the end. And even more so, if you can again, understand the math and the science and the physics behind how something works, then you can change it. You can make it better. You can make it stronger. And in the case of agriculture, it meant feeding a community. It meant literally for my grandfather and his many children, my aunts and uncles that he raised, he did that because he had a farm and was able to grow fruits and vegetables, raise animals to feed his family.
Oh, wow. So what was your first the first thing that was just in terms of school when it came to science? Like, what was the first thing that just really?
That is a good question. Well, again, numbers stood out to me. I had a second grade teacher. I remember her name was Mrs. Buckles, and Miss Buckles had a jar of M&Ms.
Did you have to count them?
If you could guess the color.
Interesting.
Like the kind of the distribution of colors in there, you could take home that jar of M&Ms.
What?
I worked really hard to figure out the size of an M&M, how the volume of the M&M was going to fill that space, how many kind of reds I could see, greens I could see. I loved M&Ms, and I was going to get that jar. And so I think those ideas, again, concepts of, if I can understand how to make sense of M&Ms filling a space or numbers and their likelihood of coming up in a card deck, right?
Yeah.
Or, like I said, all those things that were related to the physics of agriculture and irrigation, then not only would I be able to ensure food security for myself, right? Like I was going to be able to get a job, and that was so important because I saw my family struggling. But I could also lift my family out of poverty.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. And it's so interesting. And like I said, like coming from childhood, that it just kind of fed in, like,
absolutely,
like a necessity of this is something you enjoy doing, but also really like for a survival, right? Like to feed your family. And
I think, engineering as a field is one in which historically we have seen many immigrants and people from low economic status go into those fields, and their parents of first-generation students will say, be an engineer, because there is a sense of job security in the idea that if you can use your hands to make and create something, make something work and fix, those are the kinds of jobs and fields that will never go away. We always need something made, and we always need something fixed.
Yes. So that is awesome.
Yeah, so I think just the field of engineering and all of those kind of foundational elements that go into it kind of resonate with where I came from and where I knew I needed to be in order to have some kind of security.
Wow. And what, like going into high school, like how did you explore? Did you just continue that exploration in high school as well?
I think in high school, I felt a little different. I think my focus in high school was I need to pay for college.
Really? Like how do I
get scholarships? Because I knew people. I knew college was not going to be free. So I needed to figure out ways to make sure that I could get into a college and that I could pay for it. And again, as a first-generation student, my grandfather always said, you are smart. Education is going to be the one thing that no one can ever take away from you. Right. So make sure you keep going and working hard. Yeah. So my focus in high school was to try everything so that I could figure out what I was going to be good at and then wholeheartedly go into it. So with that in mind, anytime I saw an advertisement for a scholarship, I remember in 9th grade, so my first year, I was in my English class. There was a flyer about a Las Vegas Review-Journal, which was a local newspaper, would give scholarships to a student who wrote an article that was selected to be published. Oh, wow. And so I wrote. And I wrote at that time about the presentation, the way that minorities were depicted in the news, which at that time in the late 90s was a lot, mid-90s, I guess. Well, the 1900s.
Right. As my son says, the early 1900s.
Yes, in the 1900s. Right. Was a lot about crime and the rates of underrepresented minority, Black and brown crime, never really highlighting the good things that we do, right? Yeah, that we are contributors to society in very positive ways, innovative, creative, and people who support community. Yeah. So I wrote an article about, and it got published, and I got $1,000 for that's my first college scholarship. Wow. So, and that's kind of how I moved through high school, is always trying to make sure that whatever I invested my time in, I was going to be very good or try to be the best at. So that spanned athletics. That was I was a violinist. Writing. Really? President of multiple clubs.
Yeah. Oh my
right.
Gosh.
So always trying to do something, but trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to, put my all into whatever I'm doing so that I can make the outcome better. Right. And then ultimately, hopefully, be able to continue to do this through continued education.
Yeah. Wow, that's so fascinating, because it's almost like, wow, the article that you wrote kind of jumped right into your role at the Tsai Center.
Oh, yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
But before we get to that part, your transition from high school into college, what was that like?
Yes. I don't know that it's a simple transition for anyone. So in the high school that I graduated from was predominantly white, very Mormon. So people sometimes don't expect that of Las Vegas, but there are spaces that are, or the Nevada area, highly Mormon. So I was used to, I read the Book of Mormon. I was educated in those kind of things. I grew up Catholic. But understood what that was for that community, and understood what their kind of biases or preconceived notions, especially at that time, of people who were not white, people who spoke other languages, people who ingested caffeine, right? All of those kind of thoughts. Yeah. I was very familiar with that. So when I got the scholarship to go to Utah State University, it happened to be one of the only colleges that I'd ever heard about, because again, first generation, my family wasn't talking about college. Right. It was where my principal had gone to school. So he was like, yes, it's a good school, go. Yeah, right. So I went, and they paid for everything. And that was really the reason, right? That it wasn't too far from where my family was. I could drive. And so make sure that everybody was okay at home, but also go and get an education. And at that time, I thought I was going to get a degree in irrigation engineering. Oh, wow. Yeah, and come back to my community and contribute to the farming farm community.
And did you end up changing your major somewhere along there?
Yes. So at that time, the department was biological and irrigational engineering. Oh, so it wasn't a far step for me to say, oh, you know what? I think I want to do the biological side. Really? Interesting. And it was really some of the courses that I took, opportunities to start to understand, if I can understand the foundations of water dynamics, but also the bacteria, the biology of bacteria, and all the things that come in water and are from water and are fed by water, then I can maybe I can do something different. And so I decided to finish up with a biological engineering degree.
Wow. So in college, like what was that like? Like you mentioned, the environment being predominantly Mormon, and so how did you settle in, or what was your experience like?
Yeah, it was, I say Utah at that time was very snowy in more ways
Really?
than just the weather.
In more ways than one. Right.
Right. And so I don't want to say comfortable, but I was kind of used to environments like that. Like I said, my high school was predominantly white. It was also very Mormon. So I understood what I was working with as far as the population. And even more so in engineering, which is a male-dominated field, what I have become or I think even at a young age, started to see was a skill that I would need to develop in order to work with people who are very different than I am. Is the ability to communicate and understand where they're coming from, so that I could work in a problem set team, right? Or work in teams, and it was going to be necessary, and it was necessary for me to be successful in my academics there.
Wow.
But I think it's a skill that if you can learn that, and the ability to engage with people, again, who are very different, different perspectives, and appreciate that they're bringing something to the table, and start to recognize, oh, I'm bringing something to the table too, which that's a harder lesson to learn sometimes. Then you get to a goal. You can reach the goal much more quickly. And in that case, some of the goal was, let's get this problem set done.
Yeah.
Let's get this project done, because we needed to get it done for class. So I think it working with people who were going to be different was and remains very important to my development.
Wow. Yeah. And like as you're thinking back, was there like a particular project that you worked on that you were, super proud of, or maybe even just challenging?
In undergrad, I'm trying to think. So long ago.
I know, right? And you probably work on a million projects now.
I think so. Well, what I remember, the summer before my senior year, I ended up going into a program in Texas, and that was in the medical school, Baylor College of Medicine. As kind of like a summer, and it was called the SMART program, Summer Medical and Research Training. Okay. So I applied to that program, just thinking I need to do something for the summer.
Oh, really?
Because I needed, a job, and so I need to get ready for a job. And going into an environment where there weren't many undergraduates, because that's a medical school and a graduate school. So everyone was very focused on research. Okay. Very different from any environment I'd ever been in.
Really?
But learning that, okay, they opened the door for me, so I need to be able to take advantage of the learning opportunity. And when you're so kind of underprepared for the professionalism and the big leap from an undergraduate career to people who are solving real medical problems, real world problems, it's intimidating in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So what I learned was that the best mentors, the best researchers, they are doing it to solve the problem, but also to teach the next person to be as good a scientist as they are, or better. Because if you can make somebody a better scientist, then that means it's really much more likely we're going to solve these problems. Wow. You might not solve it as the individual, but someone in your lineage of knowledge will be able to move that problem forward and maybe solve it. And so that's what I really learned there, that working in teams is the only way you're going to be able to do that.
Interesting.
So it wasn't it wasn't a specific project, but in my undergraduate career, learning how important it was to not hoard knowledge,
Right.
not hoard the opportunity to expose someone else to a new idea or expose someone else to a skill set, but to share that because it's only going to increase the opportunity to solve the problem.
Yeah. I love that because it's so applicable to different areas, right? Because I think of that just working here at Yale, where, like you said, if you're hoarding information or you don't want to share, your findings or, whatever it is, then it doesn't help.
That's right. Yeah.
The group, or it doesn't help the university. So, that's really interesting. And so what, coming out of college, which is amazing, as we were talking before we started recording, and I'm like, I know nothing about biomedical engineering, and give me the computers, I can figure that out. But I find it fascinating just to read your background and everything. So like when you moved from college into like your early career, what was your first first job or
my
what?
first job? So after finishing up at Utah State that last year, because of my experience at Baylor College of Medicine, I applied to Baylor College of Medicine, its graduate program, and was accepted. And so I think one of the themes of how I've operated in spaces is. And probably to some detriment, to some, probably not the best way, is I've always learned from those around me. And like my high school principal said, Utah State is great. Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Baylor College of Medicine said, you can go to graduate school.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've learned is, what I appreciate is sometimes people can see more for you than you see for yourself. And that was amazing that those people, those programs, individuals who were leading those programs said, oh, you don't know what you can do. And here's an opportunity. What had the internet been around,
right, you would have seen
there were more opportunities. And I'm not complaining. What I'm just saying is now we're in a space where I do wonder, what if I had pursued journalism? Because you can have a career out of journalism. I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Or what if I had gone somewhere else? But I just didn't know. So I do think about that and have, since coming to Yale and seeing that the world is so much bigger than what I thought it was when I was growing up, I'm thinking a little bit more about what I could be, even at this age.
Right,
like,
I know.
What I could become.
What will I be when I grow up?
Yes, yeah. So, yes. So when I went to graduate school, I kind of had that odd mindset too. What do I want to become? What can I do here? What does somebody do with a PhD?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I got into this program. I didn't know what I was supposed to be.
Right.
So really learned from my surroundings, learned what people were doing, and ultimately finished up there and met Mark Saltzman, who is a faculty member here.
Okay.
In my last year of finishing my graduate work, he came to give a research seminar at Baylor College of Medicine, I think right at the same time, which is right across the street. So they're kind of, I collaborated between both of them. And I was really shy. I loved his work, but was nervous.
Really?
I couldn't raise my hand to ask the question. So afterwards, I went up to him and asked the question. And we were able to have a good scientific conversation. And he asked me where I was in my career. I said I was finishing up. And he said, had you ever considered being a faculty member?
Wow.
I had not,
Yeah.
because all of the faculty members I knew were geniuses, right? And just nothing I could see for myself.
Wow.
So him kind of opening that conversation, then I had conversations with my PIs, my research mentors, and they said, "Oh yeah, you should try.
Really?
You could do that." Yeah. And so that's
so
really
cool.
how I got started in my first job. And I applied, interviewed here at Yale, and got the job.
Wow.
to my amazement. Still
That
to this
is
day,
so
I'm like,
awesome. Really?
how did this happen?
How long ago was that?
Ooh, so in 2007, at the end of 2007, I think it was, beginning of 2007, I came here as a research associate and started to build my independent lab and then started teaching as a faculty in 2009.
That is so amazing.
Forever ago.
Yeah. I've always been just fascinated by that because it's like a world that I'm not really exposed to in my, work here. So what, when you coming in, like, what was that like? You said you were doing research in labs. So how does that even work? Like, the world of, okay, faculty come in and I'm assuming, like you said, it's some sort of problem or something that you're researching.
Right.
Yes. So how does that even work? Because it's a different world for me.
Yeah. So in graduate school, and the way I think about mentoring my students is you are starting to, you're gaining a skill set that helps you to become an independent thinker in that you are doing a lot of reading. You're using your hands to do experiments, seeing what the outcomes are, seeing the failures of those experiments and trying to problem solve to figure out how do I fix that. But at the end, the goal is that you start to think independently about what is the next step that this specific field, what direction should we be going in this field to solve some important problems. And so to your point, that is exactly how you, as a faculty member in engineering and in the sciences, would apply to a position. You'd say, I'm really focused on solving this problem or understanding better this biological system.
Wow.
And at that point, I had expertise in biomaterials, which means creating a material, so a solid structure that mimics a part of the human system. And for me, I was focused on the white blood cells and how the white blood cells respond to these mimics of human tissue. And that's what I learned in graduate school. When I came here, what I thought was, okay, so not just thinking about the white blood cells and the tissues, but what if we thought about the vessels, the blood vessels, which are the conduits, right, to get cells to specific parts in the tissue. And then what if we can more accurately model these human tissues with the vessels in them and then understand how cells are responding to them. And so that's what I proposed, and that's essentially what my career has been, is thinking about we have these vessels, and they're really key to making sure your skin is healthy, right? You can see all the little blood vessels feeding your skin. So if we can build a model of that, then we can start to do things to that model, and we can start to understand, oh, wait, that's why when I get a splinter, after that splinter is gone, I get a scar that forms. And if we can understand why healthy wound healing and healthy scars form, then maybe we can understand why the worst kinds, the biggest scars form, or when a scar forms in our lungs. When a scar forms in our lungs, that tightens up that soft tissue and makes it so that we can't breathe because you can't expand and stretch that scarred tissue the same way you would healthy tissue. Wow. And if we can do that in the lung, can we do that in the brain? So that's kind of the progression of where my career has gone scientifically.
That is fascinating.
Back to that early part, you come with an idea, you think, oh, could I solve that idea? Or could I just build a better model to understand those processes better? And then you try.
Wow. I see, and I'm so fascinated by this because it's like, oh, I mean, I'm trying to visualize what you go through to test all of these things in a lab, and what if you could describe a day in the lab? What is that like?
Yeah, so I can describe a day of my students.
Okay.
Now, it's very different as you transition from the graduate student who's doing the work, the postdoc or the research associate who is hands-on doing the work, to the faculty member who is now tasked with raising funds to support the people doing the work, right? Okay. So there's a transition. But so for my graduate students and postdocs, what they do typically is they've thought or have planned out one set of experiments that are going to address part of the problem. One example is that we know that some of the cells in the vessel, they will move away from the vessel, so we call it migration, when they're triggered with specific signals that our other cells give them. We want to understand what those signals do, but also what it happens to the vessel when it's left behind without those supporting cells around it. So one set of experiments might be, okay, can I build a mini tissue, a soft tissue, and then put those cells onto it. And so the students will what we call grow those cells onto this soft substrate. And then they'll add some molecule and then observe those cells under the microscope and say, oh, yes, they did move, or, oh, no, they changed their shape and they became really round and they did not, they're not reacting in a way that means that they're going to stretch out and try to crawl along the substrate. Wow. So that's a simple experiment. But the information you can get is, okay, that molecule did something special to these cells. So now I need to understand, okay, what if I block part of the receptor for that molecule or part of one of the other signals? Then can I isolate, is it just that molecule, or is there something else that happens in the environment that is driving that function?
Wow.
So that's, and my like I said, this is really the work of graduate students and postdocs in the lab who they're everything.
Yeah.
Without them understanding that their hands are the hands that are getting the work done, their eyes are the first eyes to see the result that happens, right? So sometimes the excitement of being a scientist is that you are the first person in the world to see that result because you designed this unique experiment with these interesting triggers. And you're going to be the first eyes to ever see and record that result. And that's pretty
cool
exciting.
Stuff. Yeah,
yes,
that is so
I do
cool.
miss that.
Really.
I do.
That is so fascinating. Along the way, when you think of your work, as you said, being a female in the field, is that still common, like that there aren't many women in this field? And how do you, what has your experience been? Like, whether it's positive or negative, hopefully not negative, but
right, yeah. Well, so biomedical engineering specifically is actually one of the more diverse engineering fields, especially by gender. So if we just think about male and female as the identities, then yes, it is the most. I believe at this point the most evenly split.
Really? Wow.
Yes, was not the case with me coming along, and definitely is not the case when you think about ethnicity in the field or cultural background. So yes, I think and you can just looking at the numbers here at Yale. There are, in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, 2 Black faculty. So I am 50% of the Black faculty in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. I think, that's what has been reported to me.
Interesting.
So it can feel isolating. It can feel you are different.
Yeah.
And that, just as a human, can be, isolating and painful sometimes. Especially, again, we are human.
Right. So
when we experience, as a culture, George Floyd and everything that happened around that, and even more personally, things that happen to our families that are around race or gender, right? Then we go into work and you are one of two, one of one, right? In your environment. You do feel like, oh, nobody here is going to understand the human part of me.
Right.
That can be very, there's no other word but isolating. It can be painful in that way that you're alone in your feelings and your sentiments because no one else is going to have those same experiences to share with you.
Right.
So in that way, it can be hard. I think I have dealt with it in a way that I hope has been helpful. So I high school, one of very few ethnic minorities.
Right.
Undergrad, one of very few women and ethnic minorities in my school. In my family, I am the only Black person. My mother is Mexican. My father, who raised me, is Mexican. My brother is full Mexican. My grandparents are all Mexican. My most of my cousins are half Mexican, half white. I am the only person who is Black in my family. So I don't think I have ever
really
been in an environment where I am not different. So what I learned in being in those places, one, was that I need to understand other people in order to be able to communicate and have those teams and be successful in different spaces. What I've come to learn over time is that my differences add value. And that's a hard, as I kind of intimated earlier, a hard thing to accept, especially in our culture, where everything dark, everything Black, is usually a negative thing, right? Is usually pushed to the side and not viewed as contributing in a positive way. So seeing beauty and seeing benefit and seeing things that are good come out of you and that you can bring to the world. Right. When nobody said that to you, when you just have to see it because of the trail of product that you left behind, that takes time. So even in my career, what I have tried to do is be innovative and creative and do things differently in my science. I've also, even fairly early as a graduate student, started writing op-eds about ways to make sure people who did not think that they belonged in science, in these spaces that were predominantly white, predominantly male, there's a space for you too, even if you don't feel like it. Because if I can get there, anybody can get there.
Right.
So continuously what I try to do is make sure that people, whatever you want to do, there's a space for you because you're going to add something new.
Yeah.
And I think that, if I ever think about what my legacy is or what, and not at Yale, but just in the world, I want to have opened the door for other people to bring something of themselves to spaces that matter to them. Yeah. So that can be the science bench, that can be the classroom, that could be the college, that can be the White House. It could be anything, right? Yeah. But bring you, because what you bring of your lived experience and the skills that you've grown and cultivated along the way is going to be so different from what anybody else will bring and will help it be better.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that is so amazing. And it's so true. And so important. I'm curious if you have, in terms of your experience being one of only 2 Black faculty in that area, do have students, because I think it's so important to see that representation and to know, like, okay, like you said, like, I see you doing it, and that's what I want to be when I grow up. And have you ever experienced, or has anyone ever shared with you what impact that you have had on them?
Yeah, in different ways. Well, one, the first thing I say when somebody says that, I tell them, you should be better, right? Because that is the goal, is that whether they want to be a scientist, whether they want to be like me in whatever way, yes, and better, right? Because do not stop wherever I end, you need to be better than that. Right. So I have heard that, and I do say that. And I think the reason I write outside of science, or the reason I do these kinds of podcasts or have conversations like this, it's not because it's easy or comfortable. I tell people I am a nerd. I could very much be in a cubicle and be okay, like head down. But It's because I hope to open the door for the next person. So the first op-ed I wrote for like the public, like non-scientific public, was about my mom and her being a blackjack dealer and a single parent and a seamstress and an artist, and how all of that contributed to me becoming a scientist and is key to the work that I do today. And what I remember getting out of that were one letter from a single mother who said, I thought that I was harming my daughter because of the choices I made as an adult and ended up being a single parent.
Wow.
I feel like she can be anything now. She can be a scientist.
Yeah,
she can be
yeah.
anything she will be, and I'm going to help her.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
idea, and as a mother, I now understand you are worried that you are messing
Yes.
up your
Yes.
children every day.
Yes.
So to make decisions that put your family in a difficult position, but know that can make that person stronger. That can make your child stronger.
Right.
I think that those kind of messages are what I try to cling to and keep me motivated to talk about the hard things, right? Because it's not easy to come and talk about yourself. I was trained to talk about myself.
Your work. Yes, yes.
And my science, not about myself. So
Yeah. But and that's why I'm so appreciative of you coming because, so I've been with Yale College for, I think 12 or 13 years, somewhere along there. And then, we get the announcements when heads of college come in, and just that representation was like, oh, that's awesome, and I for me even I felt like, wow, this is, and I didn't know much about you at the time, but even just talking to you today, I mean, hearing about your background, and I don't share often myself. I mean, I was a single mom too. And yeah, I mean, at the time, luckily this was the field I went into, so I was able to just kind of navigate and figure out, okay, it's a long story, but I was laid off. I was laid off at one point, while I was pregnant, and
oh my gosh,
and
the
it
stress
was
of that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was devastating, and trying to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to bring this person I'm responsible for into the world, and like you said, like, what am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choices for this person? And I mean, it's but at the same time, I was fortunate where my mom, same thing. Like my mom was, she's probably doing some kind of project right now because she doesn't stop working. And my mom is 81 years old. So, she does not, and that's been my work ethic. People tease me because I'm always doing something, but, but she does not stop working. And she does it to provide for her family, and that's it at the core,
Absolutely.
And, I just going back to you though, but
thank you for sharing that, because I think, again, we sometimes in the workspace, especially in the workplace, lose the humanity of, yes, that was, again, I don't know how you did it. Pregnant, I carried babies.
Yes,
I know, the emotional toll and the stress of just bringing somebody to, into the world.
Right.
But being a working parent while you're doing it, trying to figure out, in your head, oh my gosh, how am I going to make this work? You would have struggled with that if it was just you by yourself, let alone the idea of caring for another human, and then thinking about how am I going to get them educated and all the things that we know are important to making sure that they can survive and thrive in society. It's just overwhelming. But the strength that you have to do that and to do it so gracefully and well.
Thank you.
You should be applauded.
Oh, thank you. I mean, a friend of mine, we were talking about that the other day. It's like, yeah, we kind of forget, that because it's just something we do.
Yeah.
Like, and this is my.
What choice do you have?
I know,
Right?
and I'm the type where like if things don't go my way or there's a failure, I don't just stop, because I can't. That's how I feel.
Yep.
I can't. I have to provide for my family, and yeah, I guess normalized because
Yeah.
it's just how we live. Even though you forget that you carry all the stuff, right? You carry
Every day. Everywhere. Yes. Yeah.
And
as Black women, that's part of our problem, right? That results in these health outcomes that are disproportionately worse than other, demographics. Is not only are we responsible for so much, children and careers and things like that, but to the point that we neglect ourselves and our own health.
Yes.
And then when physicians don't see us very often unless we're in crisis, right?
Yeah.
Then there's not an expectation that they should see us, right? So these are all, to some extent, self-perpetuating problems, societal problems. But part of it is we need to demand more of ourselves in that we need to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm no one to talk, right?
Yes, I
Finding
know.
the time to eat right and exercise and sleep and finding community to be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm to you so that you're not doing everything. I'm still working on those things. So you can think about it, and we know these things. It's harder said than done.
Yeah, it really
or
is.
Easier said than done. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Easier said than done. Because you find yourself, it. Again, I don't want to talk about. This is supposed to be about you, but even
we're in the same boat. So
because I'm divorced now for 3 years. I eventually got married, and then I got divorced, and this is the first time that I've really. I'm still learning how to do things for myself, or making time for myself, or self-care, even moments of just, can I just sit in silence for
oh my God,
for like a half
space.
hour? Yeah.
It's so good.
Right. It's so good. Right. And it's so funny because when I do, my older son laughs at me because when I am in a still space, I will fall asleep.
What does that tell you?
Yes,
What did you need?
I'm exhausted, right?
Yes.
And but this is the first time that I've, like I said, it's a long story, but it's the first time that I've really focused on, me or even, my career.
Yeah.
I put a lot of things aside for a long time, and I finally said, okay, I can't do that anymore for especially health reasons.
Right.
I can't put myself second, third, fourth, fifth
exactly
any longer,
No.
And so what, like I said, coming back to you, so what, before I get, because I want to talk about the Tsai Center, but so what do you like to do outside of these three hats these three giant hats that you wear?
Yes. Well, so my boys are in baseball. They play baseball. They play baseball now for they played for the fall high school team, and they play for a travel team. So that means a lot of baseball. I'm on the
really
out watching baseball all the time. But it gets me outside, so that's really nice. And walking around, so I'm getting a little bit of exercise there. I love to sew, so I love designing clothes and then seeing if I can make it happen.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So I love
so cool.
Doing that. I'm trying to think of what other hobbies I have. And my kids actually asked me this recently, and they're like, you don't, you're not interesting.
Don't do anything. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, because I'm doing it all for you.
Yeah, well, but yeah, so I am thinking more and more about, okay, what do I want to pick up that I haven't picked up? I miss my violin. I miss playing. It was something that, and, while I played for orchestras in different groups, that was something that I did for myself, and I loved practicing it. I loved getting better. So I want to get back into that more regularly at some point. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I'd like to explore. I've started surfing whenever I can.
Really?
I'm not good at it at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
that's so cool.
I like learning new things. When I was in graduate school, I'd had a knee injury from softball in earlier. So when I was in graduate school, I wanted to learn a sport or do something to work out, but I don't like going to the gym. So I started boxing.
Oh, wow.
And that was best shape of my life. I was in the best shape of my life, but then realized it hurts to get hit. Nobody wants to get hit. Yeah. So I'm always up to learn something new. And I think that's part of that is my hobby, maybe, is trying something that's different and fun and exciting, and it's okay not to be an expert in it. And I like failing at something that it's okay for me to fail at.
Yeah. Well, you have that space to
absolutely
just experiment.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Are your kids interested in the same field that you work in, or?
I don't know. I mean, right now everything is baseball.
Really?
Yeah. So, what I tell them, they say they want to be MLB players, Major League Baseball players, and I say, okay, and the off season, what are we doing in the off season? Engineers, doctors, lawyers, what are we doing?
Yes.
So one of them has hinted at engineering, that he's maybe aerospace engineering. So we'll see. The other one keeps telling me he wants to be a drop shipper. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes. Well, tell me what he told you, and then I'll tell you what I know about it.
Acquiring merchandise and kind of being, I guess, the middleman who accumulates it and then sells it.
Sells it on,
is that a real thing?
Amazingly, it's a thing where people, they open. Well, I don't know if this is what he's thinking of, but they open up shops, whether it's eBay or even TikTok now. You can sell things on TikTok. You can, and it's really interesting because people have made
careers out of this thing. Okay, well, I'm not going to continue to make faces when he says it.
I've even seen, I can't think of the name of the place, but there are several warehouses that are starting to pop up where somehow they acquire these massive amounts of, whether it's household goods or tools or, all sorts of stuff, electronics. Right. But they, you have to buy 300 at a time. Right. You know what I mean? Like large.
Bulk, yeah.
And people go buy them and they sell them themselves it's fascinating because it's but you have to have you have to have time.
Right.
And then to do all that. But then, it's a business.
You have to understand the market, I'm guessing. You have to understand what maybe the advanced market, what the next, thing is going to be. To want to hold that amount of merchandise and then hope to get rid of it at a good price. Yeah.
Which is, it's interesting because, there's it's a whole world of,
I'm learning. Like I said, he told me this is what he wants to do when he grows up.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I know. And what's so fascinating nowadays is that, with the way that things are online now, it doesn't take much to become a merchant or a seller. Yeah. You can quickly start up a store without programming knowledge, without having a physical location, and it's, to me, it's always amazing how quickly you can, just become a seller and do things online, and kids are doing it.
So I guess he's become aware of this because he's gone through my closet and asked, can I sell this? Can I sell this? And I'm like, no, I haven't even worn that. What are you talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's very much trying to accumulate his warehouse.
A friend of mine, his son did the same thing. He's trying to sell his sneakers.
Yes.
And
Oh, he won't sell anything of his. It's all my stuff.
It's your
he
stuff
wants to sell.
That is so funny. But yeah, and I'm always fascinated because like, so my younger son, I have an 11-year-old and a 21-year-old. And the 11-year-old, he's like, I want to be a YouTuber. And, but I'm just fascinated at how quickly he figures stuff out.
Oh,
Like
yes,
because
that
I
is
haven't
true.
taught him.
Yeah.
I gave him the device and that's about it.
Right.
He has an iPad and a computer. But he's figured out his videos, and he's looking at his, it makes me laugh because he looks at his analytics, every day.
Oh my goodness. That isn't, I think one of the things I've learned, even being a parent, definitely, but being ahead of college and kind of being closer to now the undergraduate population, they will acquire whatever skill they need to be successful.
They really
and
will.
if they need to learn a programming language, not because they want to be coders, but because they want to do this thing, they will learn it and get it done.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we underestimate the potential of the next generation or our kids because we're like, oh, you're just on the computer all the time. Well, they're doing something on that computer. They're doing something on that phone.
Right.
It's unlikely that they're just staring at it, flipping through it. And if they are, it's probably a moment of generating an idea, right? So I do talk to them about screen time.
Yes, yeah.
But I also ask them, oh, so what did you learn? Or what is this person's like genre of expertise that makes you so invested in them? And I see my students doing similar things. And so I can ask them, oh, so what is it that's exciting about that? And they have an answer. It's not just blind, zombie-like.
Scrolling.
Yes,
even though there are the unhealthy parts of, social media and all of that stuff. But at the same time, it's, when you talked about screen time, that's a struggle with my son. But to be honest, like that's how I learned and that's how I got into my field because my parents just gave me a computer and they let me run with it. You know what I mean?
Wow,
And there was endless screen time.
Exactly.
And that's how I learned. A lot of what I learned was self-taught.
Yeah.
And
so that's a combination, of your parents' work ethic, right? And you having access to something that you enjoyed and could, you could gain more information about it and learn it.
Yeah.
So it's the combination of those things that taught you, oh, I love doing this and I'm going to do something productive with it, right?
Yes.
Because there could have been, in another...
like a
multiverse,
left turn. right.
There could have been a you that just zombied out.
Yes.
But and I love hearing that because that's exactly what I think about people all over the place.
Yeah.
With my background, nobody would have thought I would have been able to, be at Yale
Really?
as a leader in any of these spaces at all.
Really?
So that there was the me, all the things that made me, and the opportunity or the screen, right? Right. And then that combination of things led to something that hopefully will be productive and helpful and maybe motivating or inspirational to somebody else. Because that's what we do here, right? And in the end, what we're here for is to generate great things for the world, motivate students to also be impactful and great leaders.
Right.
So hopefully that combination does that. But it did that for you, right? The combination of work ethic and the opportunity to look at a screen and learn from it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love putting that together because, it's just, I think it's just so important to remember that you, having this sort of passion for something can really feed into, whatever your reasons are. But, like you said, for you, it was, I want a way to provide, and do things. But, when I think about even just going back, I know I'm jumping around, but going back to previous guests on the podcast, it's like everyone has a passion that they want to share with students so that, and like you said, like, so they do even more than what you were capable of or what
Yep.
you've done. And, and I think that that's what makes Yale a great place to be. I mean, I personally haven't worked at other higher ed institutions, but, I guess I'm a little biased, but, I think that that's something to me that really stands out with all of the guests on the podcast. It's just that everyone has this, this drive and passion to show students the way. And then it's like, okay, hopefully, and it reminds me of my parents. It's like, hopefully, you have all the tools to do more than what I did,
Yes,
than what
yeah.
I've been able to do. And
that's what education is, right?
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think in a place of higher education, that's what we are meant to do. We take the clay,
Mhm.
and I don't think we actually mold the clay into it. We just put it in an
Yeah.
environment that
Right.
it will become what it needs to become.
Yeah.
And we give it all of the resources or as many resources as we can. And, even some barriers along the way.
mhm.
And those can be, things like my suite mate and I don't get along,
Yeah,
or it can be
yeah.
I didn't get the Fulbright scholarship, right? All
mhm.
those are real
Mhm.
barriers to somebody, moving forward.
Mhm.
But it's what shapes them in the
Yeah,
end. And so learning to overcome those issues or learning to celebrate the great things that they accomplish with, again, all of that skill building, all those foundations, that
Yeah.
foundation that goes into what they're going to be ultimately,
Right.
that's what we're here
Yeah.
for. In the meantime, though, I always, try to remember and actually try to make sure that all of the people, my colleagues, faculty colleagues, my bosses, all the administration, and all of my staff in all of these spaces know that we all are growing too.
Yeah.
We're all human. We're all being shaped and changed by the things that happen to us at home, on the street, at Yale.
Yeah.
So we've got to take care of ourselves and take care of each
yeah.
other, because nobody wants to work at a place where you don't feel accepted, where you don't feel welcome, but also where you feel stunted or like what you're doing doesn't matter. And so in all of those ways, we need to, as members of the
Yeah.
working Yale community,
Yeah.
we need to be careful and take care of each other too.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because in one of my other guests mentioned how important it is for students to see that you're human too. That Joel Silverman mentioned how some of the students that he had advised or worked with when he was head of college, that they were almost shocked to see you in a normal, your normal every day in a t-shirt,
Yep.
or hanging out with your kids or
Yep.
your dog or something, and
Yeah.
it was and students initially coming in were so just I don't know, just maybe overcome by like I can talk to a faculty member,
That's right,
or
yeah.
have a conversation,
Yeah.
and that it was just so important for them to see that like we're human and
Yeah.
we do everyday things too,
Yeah,
and you have feelings,
Absolutely.
right? And yeah, so. But were you about to make a
I was just going to say,
comment
yes,
about
I
that?
think that is very much the case. I think being in one of the residential colleges, that students get to see me raising my kids. They, the ones that have been there since we first moved in have seen their growth, their physical growth,
yeah.
right, into people who are much closer in not closer in age, but kind of closer in experience to my students. So I hope what that does is, one, it lets students know that when a person is investing all of themselves, their family included, right? And there's nothing more intimate that you have than your family and right, your life.
Right.
When a faculty member or any member of our community is willing to do that, that's how much we care.
Wow.
That's how much we are invested in your development and your growth. Is that you are now part of my family. You are part of the people I am living with, literally living with.
Yes.
And so as you go out into the world, I know there are not many of these students who have seen a Black woman in a position of leadership. There may not be many that will see Black women as CEOs of companies. Where we are right now, that's not the case. Yeah. But when it happens, that woman has worked hard. You have seen others like her now in positions of leadership. Right. So you know how to act. You know to be respectful. You know that that person has worked at least just as hard as anyone else to get into that position. So that is also very important to me. Not only that they know that I care, but they know to care for people like me, too, when they get out into the world and they see people like us in positions of leadership.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And and even that aspect I've always found fascinating and amazing because, like you said, you're living there, so it's 24/7.
Plus,
yeah,
there's a plus,
right? Plus, right? It's your life is in the college, and which I find just to be amazing because, like you said, it's a huge commitment, and like you said, you care enough about the students to be able to do that, and like you said, you have your human side too. And you're really, it's in some ways a sacrifice that you're making to do these things, right? And
I think so. I try not to think about the sacrifice as much as I think about what, like I said, ultimately what I'm gaining too. I'm learning so much, right? I learned, and I hope it's reflected. I feel that it's reflected in my teaching and the other spaces that I inhabit. In that, okay, I know some days are rough. I know I'm not always at my best. And I still have to get up and do the show and do all the things, right? Do all the jobs.
Yes.
But I can have more grace for others when they are in a place where they need some time, they need some attention, they need to be left alone. So I try to, and I think I'm better at that now, seeing students, not just in my classroom or not just in my lab, but seeing them when they first wake up, seeing them when they've had a breakup, seeing them when they are celebrating, a football game win, when like all of the things, the ups and the downs and just the regular in-betweens, seeing them in that kind of 360 perspective, I think has made me, I hope, has made me a better teacher, a better faculty member, a better, researcher, because I get it. I understand.
Wow.
I understand.
That is so awesome. And I love that because I don't get to see these different worlds, and I talking to all the different guests here on the podcast, and so when I do have you as a guest, it helps me I get a little window of what that must be like, and it changes how I do my work too. Like I've over the time that I've been doing the podcast, it has helped me sort of change how I approach my work. With if you happen to reach out to me for help or anyone really, in terms of how I perceive what impact my work may have on, what I mean? Like a domino effect, I guess.
Absolutely. So. And sometimes so on the one hand, I think exposure to these spaces. So, I invite so many people to the college just to have lunch. You don't have to, jump all in. You don't have to be all in, but just come see because you are, even though you don't think it, you are part of the student's experience. You are part of my experience every day. You are part of, the bigger Yale.
The bigger picture.
And if we don't say it enough, we don't see it enough, then we have to figure out ways to make sure people can see the different parts of Yale, because it's a pretty great place, right? Yeah. And it helps us understand, and we're we're part of the bigger picture in Connecticut. We're definitely part of the bigger picture in New Haven. Right. We can act better exactly. When we'll do better when we see where we fit into this big machine. But it also, when I get to come here and learn something about your space, then I know, I can make a connection between you and someone else that can help both of you.
Right.
And that's also part of what we need to do here is make sure that that we are connecting, whether it's we both like, ice cream, or, whatever, or we both want to get the same thing done at the job.
Right.
Those connections are what make it happen.
Yeah.
But like I said before, I think part of that and the reason to do that at a place like Yale is that we all put so much into our work. I see my dining hall staff working hard, my facility staff in the college working hard to get something done.
Yeah.
And if nobody sees it or people take it for granted, that is crushing. And over time, the accumulation of that load and the accumulation of that crush makes people not want to do it anymore.
Yes. Yes.
And that goes for all of us.
For all of us, yeah.
So if we can share some spaces and go into these other spaces and just say, this is awesome.
This is awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
I have a salad bar in my dining hall. Yeah. I love the salad bar.
I have to come by.
Put that together on a daily basis.
Yes.
And, I love it. Yeah. And so we have to make sure that people know that we appreciate their effort. Right. We appreciate their work. Yeah. We can't do that if we don't go to these different spaces.
I know. When you're locked into your desk all the time and you don't get out, because and I admit when I first joined Yale, I was just kind of cubicle. That's it. I didn't do. And when you get out or go to events or go, like you said, the dining halls or go to a talk or, it's almost overwhelming what goes into the daily machine at Yale and things that are happening. And
that's right.
And, even the other night, and this is, and I'm not saying this to self-promote or anything like that, but
there's nothing wrong with some self-promotion.
But yeah, and I have trouble doing that myself. Like I don't do it often. But so the other night, a group of us at Yale College were honored for the Linda K. Lorimer Award.
Congratulations!
So thank you. And even with that, I was like, I just did my job, but you know what I mean? Like that was my job to be, my part in that. And but hearing the stories behind all of the recipients, and I'm like, this is some really cool stuff that people are doing, and everyone contribute. They were from all over campus, gosh, I can't even remember. I want to say the School of Architecture or School of the Environment. Just amazing stuff, saving millions of dollars for the university.
Wow.
The work that people put in.
Absolutely.
To it's really amazing. And if you don't get out and talk to people, or like you said, see these other spaces, you don't even, I feel like you're missing out.
Absolutely,
because you don't see the impact that you're really having on the whole, the whole picture.
Yep.
And you forget, if you're locked into that cubicle, you forget what's going on,
And in the end, you lose motivation, but you also lose the opportunity to meet these other, to learn, right?
Yeah, to learn and see
the people, learn the spaces.
Right.
So it's
And the fascinating work, that you're doing, like even, I was just blown away really reading your bio and everything, because I was just like, this is so cool. Like,
well, all of it. So, and I've said this, right? With the research lab, I can't do it anymore. It's my graduate students, it's my postdocs, and undergraduates who are in our lab. But even that, we have administrators. So Dina Lomax is one of my best friends,
really?
And the person who is taking care of me more than anybody else here at Yale.
Wow.
So we staff and students are what make my lab run.
Wow.
I don't do it.
Yeah.
The college staff, students, right?
Yeah.
Keep that place going, keep it exciting, keep it functional. And the same with Tsai City, right? It's the staff and then the energy that students bring, the ideas that students bring, and working together. That's what makes all of these things run. There is not one space at the university that one person does by themselves. Not one single space that they make successful on their own. It's Yale resources, Yale alumni, the staff, the administration. It takes all of us to get something started and to keep it going. So, so the way I can do all these things is that I have lots of teams of people who are helping to get the work done. Lots of teams of people in administration who are advising me and telling me, "Oh, okay, you can make that work," or "What were you thinking? What were you thinking?" Right? All of that. None of this is done by ourselves.
That is so awesome. So I wanted, since you mentioned Tsai City, I want to hear more for those who don't know much about Tsai City. Like, what is the center about? And then tell me, your role in
there. So Tsai City is Tsai Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale, and it is the brainchild of Joe Tsai, an alumni and really wonderful philanthropist for Yale. To create a center where students are able to essentially bring whatever idea they have into the public space, so into fruition. So I think there is that people have heard a lot about the entrepreneurial aspect of things that students can bring out of Tsai City. So Midnight Oil Collective and many other kind of entrepreneurial ideas have come from students who are given the resources and the skill set to take that idea, formulate it into a company or a startup, and then introduce to a network of other people who have been successful as entrepreneurs to take that to the next level, whether it's receiving funding or guidance and board formation and learning how to do market exploration. Tsai City helps you through programs and different initiatives, learn what it takes to get your idea off the ground and formulate a team to make it successful. But it's not just entrepreneurship. Really, the mission of the center around what Joe Tsai, how he named it, innovative thinking, is that entrepreneurship isn't the only way to apply innovation. It can be through intrapreneurship, so being part of an organization and innovating from within to make that space better, to make it more efficient, to make it more productive, whatever you want to do to make something improved. It is not restricted to technology. I think a lot of people think, oh, I need to be a techie, I need to be able to engineer and create something. No, it can be in the arts, it can be in the civic space. We have these exploratory pathways that help you understand how you can take your idea and create an educational platform so that you can make education of one particular idea or field improved. So it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm just going to make this widget and then I'm going to sell X of them and have a company. It can be, I have an idea and I want to see that idea brought to life so that it can be impactful. And it's really, and that's what Tsai City is about. An amazing staff and an executive director who, again, I count as one of my closest friends, really make the programs, the initiatives, help build the network of individuals, like I said, the entrepreneurs who advise our students, the alumni who come back and give speeches because they have been successful beyond belief in their pursuits. So that's kind of what, as a whole, that Tsai City does. I'm the faculty director. So what that means is, as a faculty member, I come in and I help to think about new initiatives, think about how best to make these things happen in a way that's going to bring students in. I also help think about, okay, so what are the initiatives of the university right now? What direction is the university going in? Are we coinciding with those directions? Are there ways for us to, the recent strategies for AI, for example, are we at Tsai City doing something in AI? How are we preparing our entrepreneurs, our intrapreneurs, our students for thinking about AI out in the world and in the applications that they're interested in? And again, how does that align with university goals and initiatives?
Wow.
So that's kind of the role I serve in Tsai City.
Oh, that's so interesting. Now is it? I realize that it's for students, but can staff become involved somehow?
Absolutely.
Really?
And so faculty, staff. What one of the exciting parts are that, because Tsai City has been doing this now for, I want to say 7 years, I think seven years now, there is an archive of information that's online. So if you, for example, wanted to understand, well, how do I do market exploration? There is an initiative or a program online, an intensive, that you can go and you can watch it.
Oh, wow.
The space itself was built kind of in Lower Hill House, so that area, as a space for innovation. So if you go in there, and I encourage everyone to go visit.
I haven't been yet.
It is a bright, airy, open space that is not meant for quiet study and quiet conversation. It is a space that makes you energized to have conversation, to play games, so open to anybody. Come in and explore the space. Yeah, and so I again, we are considered a student-facing or program co-curricular organization, but just as all spaces at Yale are open to faculty, staff, we should all be enjoying and learning, because that's what makes us better for the next person that we talk to.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I have to get over there, because I follow the newsletters, and I'm like, oh, they're doing such cool stuff.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I'm like, I wonder if they need IT. No.
Always, right? There's always, always something of need in the spaces.
But I'm always, it's just fascinating seeing what's coming out of the center. And, I'm just blown away, is there like a not a competition, but annually?
So there are, and so that's one of the ways that students get funding, is that these teams are built because the students have ideas and they want to form a team, and then at the end of the year they are awarded funds to keep this this idea going. And again, it's not just the money and the award. It's also, now I know the director of this VC or the chair of this VC. Now I know somebody in the health service center. So somebody who can serve as an advisor on my board.
Right.
It's not just the thing you get out. It's the education and the network of people that really, again, make whatever idea you have possible in the real space.
Oh, that is so cool. I love that. I promise I will stop by there at some point.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, I think one of my favorite parts of Tsai City is the physical space is energizing.
Really?
It'll make you. It's a beautiful space. It's a sunny space, and you will feel like I can do something.
Really?
Like, yes, you will feel energized.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's on Hill House?
It's on Hill House, and it's I think the address is actually Prospect, but it's right behind the CID. So if you come up on Prospect, you can make that little cut that's by the CID, and it's right there. It's kind of like, I think of it as a little gem hidden between Hill House and Prospect.
Okay, because I'm trying to visualize between Hill House and Prospect. I've probably passed it a million times.
Yes, I'm sure. Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. Yes, I will definitely visit soon. So, I could talk to you all day.
Makes me happy.
This is so fascinating. And I love, we talked about your multiple hats, being head of college, your work at Tsai City, and then being part of the faculty. What excites you going forward? Like, is there something that you'd love to work on in the next few years, or what do you see in the future?
Yeah, that's a hard question because, as we started this conversation, I was like, people are like, oh, you should do this. And I'm like, oh, yes, I'll do it. You should try that. Oh, yes, I'll do it. Right. So I am currently in trying to understand a couple of things about myself. What do I like to do? What am I good at? What am I not good at? What am I not good at, but I want to learn to be better at? And I don't know. I'm in the process of learning about myself right now to know what will be next. Because everything, I can genuinely say everything I do, I love. Yeah. I don't know if I'm good at any of it, but I really like so much of all of my jobs. Yeah. I love my research. It's what I feel the most comfortable with because it's what I was trained to do. The college has been just an eye-opening experience. Tsai City, the idea that who doesn't love the idea that what you have in your brain can be real,
can be something,
right? Yeah. And can impact hundreds, millions, even if it's 10 people. Right. It's making an impact. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
So when I think about that, I love everything I do. I'm trying to figure out what am I good at? What are the things that re-energize me, so that I could continue to do it for long term? Because I understand that people burn out, and I don't know what I'm going to burn out at. Yeah. But it's going to happen. In order to prevent it from being a complete meltdown, I got to figure out, what is draining me. Yeah. So I wish I had a better answer.
No,
I don't know what's
answer.
Next. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, instead of looking in the future, if you thought of yourself, whether it's your younger self or your high school version of yourself, is there anything that you would tell your younger self?
So I have answered this question for people at different stages of their life. For my undergrads, what I usually say is I wouldn't have taken myself so seriously. 1B is not going to kill you. Yeah. Right? Okay. The grade B, I don't know if you have an allergy, right? Yeah. So I think I would have learned to enjoy life a little bit more. In my undergrad years, I wouldn't have taken myself so seriously and thought everything was so serious. My high school me, I would have probably said something similar. Make sure you're enjoying all of these things that you're exploring. You don't have to be the president of everything. Oh, wow. You can just sit back and enjoy it. Right? You don't have to be the best at everything because, because it's not that important. It's good for you to sit back and enjoy things. The young me, I would have. I probably would have said things are going to be okay. I think that's when I was worried. I was a worrier when I was really young. It's going to be okay. Yeah. And then, so I think I was the most stressed in my life as a junior faculty member because you think everything I do is going to fail and then I'm going to be fired.
Really?
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I would have told the junior faculty me, try to do the things that you love. Try to do the things that you, that are important to you because those experiments, that mentoring, those grants, whatever it is that you're doing, you're investing your time, make sure it's important to you. Because if it's successful, you're going to have to keep doing it. And if it's not successful, you will still be proud of what it was. And remember that not getting tenure at Yale or not... There's pretty good places to land, right outside of Yale. So I wouldn't have just thought it's make or break. I would have given myself a little bit more understanding of a cushion. I don't know. Hopefully those are
those are great.
Some good tips for the
yes, absolutely. in terms of, we mentioned looking ahead is difficult, but like you said, you're trying to, which I think is a great answer because, sometimes you're going, and then, it sounds like you're taking a step back to see, to kind of almost like not an assessment, but kind of just, taking a step back to really just put more thought into where you'd like to be, or like you said, what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. And
I think it's important because that is what our work ethic,
yes.
right? And most of our students at Yale, how did they get here? Doing,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
So we are more alike
right.
than,
I know.
than anyone
That's
would
so
expect,
funny.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think it is important to sit back for a minute and figure out, okay, why am I doing all of these things? So it wasn't, I think it was about a year ago, I had a conversation that I never would have expected. And it was one thing that this man, so we have a person who is the, I think it's called the Vice Provost for Research. He and I had a meeting because we were talking about something about research, maybe resources. And something he said to me in conversation was, you have nothing to prove to anyone anymore.
Oh, wow.
I got off that Zoom call and cried. Because I think for people who are doers, your whole life you are doing not just because you want to make sure you get fed, you want to make sure that you graduate, but you do it because you're always also trying to prove to everyone else and to yourself, I deserve to get fed. Wow. I deserve this next thing. I deserve to go to college. And I think for the first time, having someone, this was probably our first meeting. All he knew was my CV. He may know what my jobs are.
Yeah.
But this man said that to me.
Wow.
Broke me in half, right? Because we don't ever think about that. I don't think my students think about that. I don't think you thought about that, right? We're always doing because we feel like we need to prove that we deserve it.
Yeah.
And you don't have anything to prove to anyone.
Wow. That's a great note to end on. Because, you don't... It's hard to think of that, right? It's you don't. If you were to think of changing how you work in terms of I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone, and changing the, I guess, drive or the, you know what I mean, the mission behind what you do,
right? Yeah.
And if you remove that whole piece, it becomes a whole other thing.
Exactly. At first, it's scary because you think, oh, maybe I'm not going to be as good at getting this stuff done.
Yeah.
But then I think what happened after crying, after digesting all of that, after the kind of emotion of receiving something like that and sitting in it for a minute was, wait, I do this because I like it. I do this because I like to talk with people. I like to enjoy my students. I like to see my students succeed.
Yeah.
I like to see my graduate students publish that paper. I like to see my staff feel like, yes, we pulled off that event.
Yes.
Didn't think it was going to happen, and it happened, right? I love the feeling of that I get when I see other people achieve what they maybe didn't think they could achieve.
Yeah.
That's why I do all the things. Not because I don't have to prove it myself to anybody anymore.
You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Wow. That is awesome. I love that. And man, I could talk to you all day, I tell you. I think that's a great note to end on. Like, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone, especially if you love what you do. And like you said, the what you take from, seeing your students, whether even their successes, but even,
they learn from failure.
We learn from right?
Failure. Yeah.
So, oh man, thank you so much. Honestly, I could probably talk to you all day. And
well, you're great. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. This was awesome, and I've been looking forward to it, and I'm just so happy that you could take some time out of your crazy schedule to be here today, because I think it's so important. Like I said, at least in my world, I don't get out. I probably don't get out enough, but
none of us do.
Yeah, but it's become more and more important to me to talk to my colleagues and meet you all and have these conversations, because I'm not exposed to that world, and I think it gives you a totally different perspective of the work that we do and why we do it, and why do you want to be here at Yale? Because as a kind of a side note, like I'm involved in a leadership program with some other fellows, and it's interesting. How do I put this? It's interesting that some are surprised that I've been at Yale for so long, because it's a different mindset at different institutions, right? Yep. Like different experiences. But for me, it's been as I used to be sort of head down doing my work, but as I've started to expand a bit and see different, even coming to the broadcast center, it's like, wow, this is a cool space, and just seeing the work that they do. It changes. It's, for me, it's been life changing, because, talking to people, hearing your stories, things that I didn't even know about you, and realizing you're human,
I am human. You are human. We're all human.
Yeah,
right?
We're all human, but doing amazing work. And like you said, it's the team behind you. But still, to me, it's just awesome and amazing, and to see you, seeing you, the representation is different. It's different for me, and I just appreciate your time, and I appreciate you. So
thank you, and likewise,
thank you. So I guess we'll end on this note, because we could probably go on till 3 hours, but Anjelica, I'm just it's just so cool to talk to you, and I really want to make a point to connect more frequently, because
where I live. Literally, you know where I live.
I know where you live. So I will come by and say hi.
Please.
And I hope, like you said, the big takeaway for listeners is, like, you don't have to prove anything. Love what you do, love your team, the people involved, and enjoy it. Stop to enjoy it too.
Yes.
And or learn from it, right? Even if it doesn't go as expected. So, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great to get to know you today. Thank you. And I guess we'll end on that note.